I want to welcome everyone today. We're really hoping that this will be a conversation. Nothing overly formal, but just a conversation about leadership and wisdom and many other things. So I'm going to just share my screen very briefly, but then we're just gonna, hopefully we can see each other on screen and be able to chat. So, oh, here's all my stuff here. Somewhere here, there it is. I want to welcome you all to today's webinar, and I'm a huge Tracy Ellis Ross fan, and this just really resonated with me when I saw this quote, especially given our topic today. Spending the time knowing yourself and gaining that relationship is part of where you find your voice and gain the courage to use it. And I think, of course, Tracy is definitely one of those who has been given that or gained that courage to use her voice. And I also want to encourage you, the International Society for Organization Development and Change is sponsoring this event today. And I just want to encourage you to check out our organization if you're not familiar with it. I met the lady, Lena, who connected me with Jenny through ISODC. And it's really about a group of people who are coming together who want to create positive change in our world today. And we have a lot of scholars and practitioners, and it's just a pretty neat group of people. So if you're interested in, maybe getting possibly another tribe, please check us out today. And again, my name is Kimberly Barker, and I'm a vice president at ISODC. I want to thank my wonderful husband, Greg Barker, who helps me with some post-production work. He doesn't like the shout out, but I continue to give it to him. And I just want to ask a couple of questions today, and you can put these in the chat if you want, or just give a shout out. But where are you in the world today? And what perspective do you bring today? I heard that we had a lot of folks from the Midwest here. But yeah, just if you wouldn't mind just giving us a shout out as to where you are. I'm from Ann Arbor. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan right now.
I'm Jen Harrison. I work for a company that is throughout the state of Wisconsin. I live in Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin.
Awesome. Welcome.
I introduced myself before. I'm Patty Brockman. I actually work with Jen at that same organization we were talking about earlier. She recently did a talk or a chat with some staff and invited us to join today. And so I'm glad I did. And so looking to support the people from the Midwest.
Yeah, I saw a lot of names from your organization, and I was excited to see that. I thought that was really neat. So. Welcome.
I'm Katie Abhold, and I am from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I am a stay-at-home mom to my 6-year-old daughter, but I am also in the midst of following my dream in starting my own business.
Awesome. Yay. I have to put there, I'll put the clapping of the hands for you. So anyone else, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, Sarah's in Madison. She's presently a doctoral student in career transition. And she's she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life yet.
So I have a question. Where is Sarah? I don't see a little square with Sarah.
It's in the lower left-hand corner. We might be getting, she's having some issues, with her mic, and we might be getting on to page 2 already. So John is from Ghana, Africa.
Interesting.
And he's an OD consultant. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to share my screen one more time, I think, And I just want to show you all. I want to introduce our incredible speakers today. Virginia or Ginny Gilmore and Duane Trammell. For those of you who don't know, from the time she was a young girl, Ginny loved playing and dreaming in a treehouse located in the woods of her childhood home in Chilton, Wisconsin. It was here that Ginny would turn to nature for healing and connect with her heart through writing. When faced with a time of great change as an adult, Ginny once again turned to the nurturing lure of the woods for reflection, healing, and guidance through the reconnection with the wisdom of her own heart. The wisdom of the woods inspired her to pursue a degree in spirituality and leadership and participate in many influential learning opportunities, including Jean Houston's Mystery School program, the Robert K. Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, Parker Palmer's Circle of Trust, dialogue through the Ashland Institute, and the Compassionate Listening Project, among others. Wonderful. Duane is, after reading the compilation of the journal entries authored by Ginny 20 years earlier called The Healing Journey, Duane was inspired to work with Ginny not only to publish the original work, but to also add content and stories for readers on their personal journey of navigating life's expected changes. Duane is the co-author of 5 books, 2 business titles of which have sold over 200,000 copies and translated into 5 languages. That is incredible. Topics have covered time management, an unconventional approach, life, work balance, and servant leadership. Duane is a founding partner and president of Trammell, McGee Cooper and Associates, where he has designed and taught workshops in leadership development for 35 years. I want to welcome you guys. And Duane, that means you started when you were 5, right?
You are too kind. We will be together every week now.
Sounds great.
Mhm.
So I was going to ask you guys how you connected, and I kind of shared it a little bit, but could you expand on that a little bit more and tell us how you became best friends and colleagues?
Sure. I think we're going to kind of go back and forth on this, but it's interesting. This leadership organization is a way that we connected through another leadership organization. There was a international conference on servant leadership that Ginny and I both believed in and attended each year and I think I was just talking with Ginny 20 years or so ago. The interesting thing about that is we were what I call acquaintances. We had a lot of mutual friends and we'd go to dinners. But it was, and I'll say, be honest, it was kind of a surface friendship because we just didn't know that much about one another. And that all radically changed about 15 years later in 2015. So Ginny, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Duane and I were working with some colleagues in some meetings, some phone meetings, and we had one set up. And then something happened in my neighborhood in Door County. One of the members of our community had passed away unexpectedly, and his funeral was at the same time as one of our calls was planned. So I wrote Duane a short message. I wrote everyone a short message and said, there's a really difficult time going on with my neighbor and the family, and I'd like to be at the funeral of the husband and father who passed away, so I won't be able to be with you, and it's going to be a hard day. And then when I got home from what was a very meaningful time and certainly, heartbreaking, there was a message from Duane on my computer. I think it was 2 or 3 lines long, but it's like right from his heart. And my heart was tired and it felt like I was just getting a warm hug. And that shifted me And I wrote him back from that place. And then he wrote back, and we started to explore some of the issues that we were each really knee deep in, that were difficult issues because we had some life changes going on. And over that time and how we explored, for example, redemption relating to my neighbor who had passed away, and some other issues that were areas that were really deep, we started to build a trust between us that we didn't expect, frankly. And it was a surprise and a real gift for us. And of course, we learned later that it was creating the foundation for us, that kind of trust, that delving into deep life issues, some of them spiritually centered, was setting us up for what would happen next to bring us to where we are today with the book Wisdom from the Woods. So,
And I have it right here. Yay.
there it is. Yes.
Life truly is a journey, isn't it?
Life is a journey with lots of unexpected gifts.
Yeah.
And if we are aware enough to pay attention to them and turn toward that which connects for us, then there are immense possibilities and opportunities, and particularly meaningful relationships like the one that Duane and I share, and several people on this in this podcast or this webinar today as well.
So how did you turn this into a book? What prompted you to take that step?
What happened, I'll go back to the beginning. In 1996, which was the time I was about to turn 50 years old, I was going through a really difficult time, unlike any other time I had experienced. My youngest daughter, Ginger, was graduating from high school, and she was about to go to college 1,000 miles away. So I was empty nesting. Of course, I was so excited for Ginger, but I also had a really deep sadness in my heart because, you know, that time that we were growing up together was ending, and she was about to take her wings and go. At the same time, I was experiencing a second divorce. And that was disappointing to me, of course. And I felt that I needed to do some reflection and learn what I needed to change. And the third thing that was going on at the same time was that our family business, I was a part of a third generation family member group that was serving in that organization, was working towards selling. And I was preparing to end my time at that organization. So my roles were radically changing all at once. My role as mother, my role as wife, my role as participant in a meaningful organization doing purposeful work. Some of these were ending and to say the least, radically changing. So I didn't know what to do. And I was lost, confused, not the decision maker I was used to being. So at that point, I found myself in the summer going to Door County with a friend of mine and approaching in the woods and approaching the water. And I had this intuitive experience that I needed to come to Door County for the season of fall that I loved so much as a child, and rent something in the woods, so that I could have this 2-month sabbatical during that season to find my center, to find some grounding for myself. I knew at that point I was exhausted because I'd been so busy. I was on that busy wheel. I had to get off. And I knew that it was time for me to slow down, to take that pause, to get back into the center of my heart, to find within myself what I felt was my essential or true self, to really meet my soul. And so I did this, and it was a courageous journey. It was a meaningful journey. And when it was over, thank God I wrote the story about it and I documented it. And then the miracle of fast forward 20 years later, when Duane and I were forming that, more close and personal relationship, we were trying to understand each other. Who is Ginny? Who is Duane really? And I thought that he was going through a deeply disturbing time himself. He had worked for 35 years with this colleague, Ann McGee Cooper, who was a close friend of mine and such an inspirational person in the servant leadership work in the world. And Anne had cancer, and she was beginning to move toward the end of her life. And it was deeply disturbing for me, but for Duane, it was really uprooting all of what he had had in the formation of his work in his life for so long. So I thought, well, maybe I should send him what I wrote in the woods. So I did. And he read it immediately that very night from cover to cover. And he wrote me an email shortly after that. And he said, Ginny, I think this is the answer to my prayers. There's a roadmap in what you wrote that's going to help me. It's going to ground me, and it's showing me the way. I'm amazed and I'm so grateful. And you know what else? I think we should publish it. Wow. Well, I was kind of stunned. And I was so grateful that it was really helpful for him. And I knew he had published other books. And I said, well, that could work, And so then we started to write these emails back and forth and continued to nurture and build a heartwarming relationship between us. We thought it would be easy to publish, but it took 5 years. But those 5 years, we knew eventually were helping us to know how to write this book. So you will learn not only what happened to me in the woods with the first part of our book, part 1, the healing journey, but you'll know what was going on for Duane during that time, and you'll know the rest of the story for me. But in addition to that, we've included in the book stories, compelling stories of 3 friends and colleagues of ours, and how each of us so uniquely navigated our lives during these really difficult, and they were difficult challenges, to get to a place of a new beginning where we each had a sense of renewing, a sense of healing and hope, and we met possibilities that formed in our lives much greater than anything we ever could have imagined. So that's how it all formed, how my time in the woods 20 years before became such a meaningful foundation for Duane and me, and then we wanted to share it through our book with the world.
Duane, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Jenny's pretty much told the story.
So beautiful.
The relationship that I had with my business partner, I taught school in the public school system, Dallas School District, for the first 8 years of my career. And then I ran into this incredibly bright, talented genius of a woman. And she invited me to create a business with her. And so we worked in leadership and development for those 35 years. And just from a very personal level, Anne was what I call a health nut. She was vegan. She did yoga. She was 20 years older than myself. And I just knew that she was going to live to be 100 years old and she wanted to work that whole time. So when she came down with cancer, it was just this shock. It's like, no. And I know many people in this audience has friends and family, and you just go, there's no way. And then, but we went through it together. It was kind of funny. I told Ginny in some of the emails that we would go to the transfusion rooms together because Anne wanted to keep working on business to keep her mind off of everything else. So we set up all these Post-it notes and table in the transfusion, and it just looked like an office in there for the day. But then unfortunately it crossed the brain barrier and it was terminal then at that point. So at the time that email exchange happened between Ginny and I, she was heartbroken for her neighbor. That was a tragic situation. And I was just heartbroken with my business partner of 35 years. But I will also tell you from a leadership perspective, we were business partners for that number of years. And so I had a crisis of confidence in leadership at that point too, because it's like if you lose half of yourself, half of your team, half of your partner, I began to think, are people going to want to hire me without her? And can I perform as well without her? And could I carry her job and mine too until it kind of worked out something? So all of this advice and consulting that we had been giving these Fortune 500 companies on leadership, all of a sudden I had to sit down and somehow or another figure this all out for myself. And so Ginny's book came, her manuscript that she had written, The Healing Journey. And it was exactly what I needed. I needed to take some time. And I'll tell you now, for those of you that are interested in the book, read something about the book, or maybe have purchased it, I couldn't take 60 days like Ginny. In fact, I had to work longer hours because of the situation. But what I figured out, I'm kind of one of those left brain analytical people. I took that manuscript and then I started dissecting it, and I figured out, okay, here are some small steps that I can do to get on with my life and what's next going to be happening, and also process the grief, because Ginny does a lot of that in the first part of the book. So I did mine not in 60-day sabbatical, but I did mine in short times on the weekends and, taking some time in the evenings. And I will tell you that worked beautifully for me. And also having the exchanges. The last thing I'll say before we leave this question, Ginny and I have seen one another in person 3 times in the last 5-6 years.
Wow.
We have probably exchanged, Jenny, what would you say, 3,000 or 4,000 emails
Yes.
back and forth.
And growing.
It's funny. We started printing them out to begin with and highlighting things, and then we had too many volumes of notebooks and we just stopped that business.
You wanted to save some trees, right?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, wow. That is such an awesome story. First of all, I have so many tabs in this book, but I think this is in the foreword. You say, if we do not consult our own soul, we never know what we believe. You had me right there. I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, nothing is more true than that. How did you were just drawn to the woods. You were just drawn to taking that time. Did you just feel like it was a pull in your life that you needed to do this?
When I was young and I lived in the woods with my parents, my 2 brothers are older, so they had left. So I was kind of by myself. There were some tough times. My mom had cancer. In fact, she had cancer 3 times and died when I was 25. So some of that was going on during that time, and there were some other stresses. And I would walk in that woods with my dog and discover things. And one of the gifts was I discovered this tree house. And it wasn't mine, but I made it mine. And I climbed up, on the tree house, and I sat on this platform, and I started to listen to the wind, and I started to connect with a presence that was there, and have these conversations in my mind and my spirit. Who am I? What's important to me? And the key question that kept coming up for me was, how are we going to get along together in this world? I was just one of these young people who was very sensitive about the conflicts that were going on. And I wanted people to get along. I knew that if we would connect together, I have connector as a strength. I think I did as a child, that everything would grow. And so I listened with my heart because there was a presence there. And it took care of me, and calmed me and it gave me ideas. And so that was a part of what was etched into me when those 3 challenges happened all at once. So Door County is filled with woods. And the fall, is a time that I loved the most as a child. So it just all came together that intuition came when it did in the summer. And I had time to get work with a realtor and find just the right cabin. It found me. I don't think I found it, but everything just sort of came together so smoothly. Once that idea was something I gave a commitment to. And so when I did that and I arrived at the woods for this thing that was so important to me, that was somehow going to help me, I'm not going to tell you that everything was just wonderful from the very beginning, because it was hard. There was no schedule. I had to
Right.
create the container for my own healing, really. I had no idea what to expect. I had done some things that helped prepare me the weekend before, and you'll learn about that in the book with the mandala workshop. And I had some sense that I had some kind of spiritual helpers with me, but it took a while for me to get comfortable with that kind of silence and that kind of, I want to say, aloneness.
And I'm so grateful that you had the I guess the fortitude to write it out. Had you been journaling
Yes.
in the past? Okay.
Yes, I journaled from the time, when I was a young girl.
Okay.
So that was a practice that helped me take what was inside me and put and express it. And when I would do that, some ideas would come to me or some direction would come to me. And I was committed to journaling when I went into the woods. And I brought Julia Cameron's Artist's Way journal with me and her book, The Artist's Way. And I began to read it and I began to use her journal in the way that she recommended it, to really get up in the morning and let it all rip. Put all of your feelings down. Don't worry about if you spell something right or anything. Just empty your heart. What do you love? What don't you love? What do you yearn for? What's challenging you? And so I did that. And that's how I could write the book, because I used the journals to write the book. And the other thing I would offer is that there is a place in the journals that I just reread. And like all of us, my life was just like overbooked. I was very busy. I have the tendency to get too busy often, and I'd experienced burnout several times in my life. And now I finally had the time to feel what I was feeling and to listen to the questions and to review my life, frankly. That wasn't easy. There were swings of, ups and downs and tears and joy, and sometimes all of them several times in a day. But giving myself that kind of time and that kind of space to really listen to my own heart was something that I had not had the time and space to do for years and years. And that, I think, one of the things that got me there.
Wow. We, in my very first PhD class, there was a alum that came to the class and he said, I want you, if you don't have a journal, get a journal, begin writing in it. And I think this is my 8th journal now. And, but at first I was like, what? This is the kind of advice we're getting, I'm paying good money for this. And I said, and I stopped myself and I said, Kim, don't prejudge. Get a journal. And I didn't even know what to do with the journal, right? I was like, what do I do? So I started having it be a gratitude journal where I would write 3 things every day that I was grateful for. And now if I go a couple days and I haven't written in my journal, I just don't feel right. I mean, it's something that I need to do on a regular basis. And I just read an article, I think it was last week. They said, 10 days of gratitude, of writing in your gratitude journal, and this is a scientific study, has reduced workplace toxicity. It reduced gossip in the workplace and incivility. They did groups with people, and it changed the culture just by the people in the workforce doing gratitude journaling. And I just thought that was so incredible.
That's significant. And I think there are so many different ways to journal, Kimberly. And I'd like to just turn to Duane, because between us, we kind of developed our own form of journaling. And I'd like you to just share about that, Duane.
Sure. I want to share just one piece before I do the journaling. Journaling has been really a important part of our connection, and we've done it through email. The one thing that I just wanted to tell everyone in the group is that Ginny and I have a lot of similarities, and that's why we connected, but we also have some pretty big differences. One of those is I live in a high rise in the middle of downtown Dallas on the 25th floor. And I have an interesting relationship with nature. It is mainly concrete buildings and manicured parks, other things. Now, I enjoy going to the beach and going to the mountains, but in trying to figure out from Ginny's part one of the book, how I also could get these revelations from on high from nature, I set out one afternoon, not at the right time of the year in Dallas. It was in July, and went to a local lake and set up all of my day camping supplies. And so I was going to commune with nature, journal, and do all the things that Ginny did in the woods. Well, about 2 hours into this, it was triple digits here in Dallas with humidity in the 90s. And I was sweating and uncomfortable, and bugs were crawling up me. And I thought, this just ain't going to work for me. All I could think about was being back in my high-rise condo and taking a nice cold shower and sitting in the air conditioning here in Dallas. So I did that. I came back, and it was a good learning experience, because one of the things that Ginny and I talked about as we were writing the book was that our book is kind of like a buffet, in that there are lots of different practices, and everyone has to find what kind of works for them. And that's what I realized at that point. And it was significant. And one of the things that did work for me is the journaling. And if there are lots of clients that, Kim, like you're talking about, were suggested to journaling. There are a lot of clients that I've suggested journaling to, and they just hate journaling. I mean, and they'll try it and it just doesn't work for them. And that's okay. You know, there are other ways that you can find yourself. I mean, emailing was one of the ways that Jenny and I did it. Other is just going on a long walk with a friend and talking things out. I still do like the journaling idea. And if one thing that I have recommended to people is, if you are just trying to start out journaling, there's one that's called the 1 line a day journal. And it is so much fun, because there's 5 years in the same journal, and you can look back 3 years ago on October the 20th and see what you were feeling, thinking, and the most important thing that happened that day. And that's gotten a lot of people into journaling from just doing that 1 line a day.
And who came out with that? Her name is on the tip of my tongue.
I wish I had.
I can't remember.
Mine's in the other room.
So. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
But if you Google it, it's 1 line a day journal.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. Can you talk about having a learning partner and how that works for the two of you?
I'm a big fan of strength finders, and so I kind of work with my strengths, and connectedness is something important to me. And also, I love the experience of collaboration, and when I can listen to another person and share something that's coming from my heart, I get new ideas. I can get that in my journal with spirit and myself, but when I connect in that way with another person, it seems to grow. The potential seems to grow, and the creativity becomes, 1 + 1 equals 3, and great things can happen. I've seen it all over our community when 2 women or 3 women, 3 people sit down for a cup of coffee and they're concerned about something, and
Oops. We froze.
Kimberly, you're muted. We must have lost Ginny.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Let's see.
She'll probably
Hmm.
come right back. I should tell her, Ginny.
Yeah, that's never happened before.
I know.
Got great bandwidth, so not sure what happened there.
Well, the good news is she froze in a good stance. I've seen
Yes.
worse.
Oh, that's very, very true.
You know, why she's coming back on, I can
Oh, okay. Yeah.
talk about the learning
Yeah.
partner thing. To me, it has been at least 75% of the experience for me for the wisdom of the woods and helping me understand and find my own self. And I'll give you a good example. So while we were working on and writing the book, I had one of my first major presentations without my business partner at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School. And I was doing a thing on leadership for a big facility that they were building up there, a new hospital that's just recently opened. And I was scared to death because there were some of the brightest minds from all over the world that were researchers in this. And one of my jobs was to try to help all of these people get along as they were building this hospital and some leadership development and culture work. But in my mind, I was just seeing these people pin me on questions and try to back me into a corner. And again, my business partner wasn't there, with me to kind of feel some of that. So I was writing Ginny about all of my fears, about this. And what she did was write back to me and mirror to me, Duane, you've got this. Remember this, facility that you've helped build in Dallas, and this one, and this one, and this one. She said, anyway, she just gave me that confidence and having a learning partner that way. And then the program did go wonderfully, spectacularly. And I was so happy when I came back. Then we got to share in the celebration of that. And, but what she did for me in those moments as a learning partner, it was part of my grief process, getting over Anne, not having her with me, but also just a crisis of confidence.
I love that. And you talked a little bit about leadership, but how does this really relate to your leadership capabilities?
One of the things that we had talked about earlier was the state of burnout right now that so many people are in. And I just, Ginny Knuth, our marketing person, just put a Facebook post out yesterday citing an article that has just come out in the last couple of months with staggering statistics in it that 60% of people in leadership feel like they are in burnout. And this is since COVID, this is since the break and people working from home, that working remotely, if you're a leader, can just be exhausting, trying to connect, keep everything going and all the dots going. So the first book that my late business partner and I wrote was You Don't Have to Go Home from Work Exhausted. It was 20 years ago, and we thought that burnout, once everybody worked more remotely and we had all this technology, it was going to be a thing of the past. So it is not, as the article Ginny quoted from. So when I come back to leadership, one of the things that our in servant leadership, our mentors, Robert Greenleaf tells us, is that we have to withdraw in order to rebuild ourselves. Mm-hmm. And to me, the wisdom from the woods experience is reminding ourselves that we need to take some time away. Now, some of that is just physical, and fun vacations and doing some things like that. Right. But the other aspect of it is spiritual. If you're going to create a vision for your company or be a part of it, if you're going to listen to people, if you are going to, as Kim, as you mentioned in the first part about ideas, if you're going to bring ideas to the workplace and have them, you need, and we all need this time ourselves to find our grounding and find our centering points. I will also tell you, just in writing leadership development programs, when I have taken this time alone and I've taken this time to work, my best ideas come during this time. Sometimes it's in the shower, but other times it's in the time that I spend with myself. So I can just tick off every leadership trait that there is: challenging processes, taking risk, sharing vision, modeling the way for others. To me, you can't do any of this unless you take care of yourself. And one aspect of taking care of yourself is what I call the wisdom from the woods experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And what we were referring to is I read an article on LinkedIn, and it said one of the reasons people are leaving their jobs at such a record pace is because their feedback was never asked for. So they don't feel connected to their workplace, and they're happy to just transition on to another opportunity because they don't feel part of the culture.
Well, I know it's a tried expression, but if you don't have your own house in order, you can't work on somebody else. And again, I just find that if I'm overly exhausted, tired, or even haven't done the spiritual aspect of the passionate part of my work and what I connect to, I just can't show up in a good place for other people. And that's what I think the article is mentioning. You're talking about that. I can't hear other people's ideas. I can only think about what's in my own head.
Can you talk? Yeah, it's so good. It's good to see you, Ginny.
I don't know exactly what happened, but I changed computers here, and I loved what I was hearing.
Oh, I really like that you have a personal roadmap in this book. And I love that you give examples, because the 3 stories that you give, they're so different, right? So it's not, your roadmap is not meant to be something cookie cutter that you can put down. But how do you start creating your own roadmap?
I think one of the questions that helps me the most, and it seems to last as a very meaningful question, is what lights me up? If we're in touch with what lights up our spirit and lights up our heart, and we have ways to be aware of that, self-awareness is probably the very first step to know how to create what nurtures your own spirit and what gives you a sense of peace and that centeredness that Duane talked about. If I'm not centered, I'm more worried about myself than the person I'm serving. If I don't know that and I'm not taking good care of that, then I'm really not going to know how to create a roadmap that's going to make a difference for me either. So any of the practices that help us get in touch with what matters to us, what our heart is yearning for, what lights us up, will connect us with that inner wisdom. I think you talked about that wisdom as we opened up to
Mhm.
get in touch with that wisdom that lives in the very center of you. They are led to the ways that nurture your spirit in alignment with what your life is meant for, what you came here for. What's the most important? You talked about COVID and all the changes people are making right now. I wonder, do you think it's because maybe we didn't choose to have that quiet time or that shutdown? That gave us a gift, and that was to get in touch with what wasn't working for us
Yeah.
and working for us, or what we hope works for us. And started to take steps like changing our job, or for me, Jim and I are moving and we're uprooting and we're going to Chicago where our grandchildren are.
Oh,
You know, when you're locked down and you can't go see your family, something really shows itself to you. So that's the beginning. And then you can start taking the next step. And then you give yourself more time to ponder and reflect on what matters to you and what will help you the most. And keep taking those steps. That's what I think, and listening to your heart. Duane, I don't know if you'd add to that.
Yes, this is my thing. One of the things that I keep saying thing too much. One of the elements that I did with Ginny's book was I needed to make it a little bit more linear, for me.
mhm.
So in chapter 10, we do outline the steps that we both agreed on, that Ginny has started talking about. Intentionality is one, naming whatever it is that you're in. And that sounds
Yes.
kind of simplistic, but I'll give you a good example from my own life. In the last couple of years, one of the goals that I've had is to not work quite as much and go into a partial retirement. And that was kind of a real scary, both a scary thing and a exciting thing.
Mhm.
But until I started saying it out loud, I couldn't move toward it. And then all of a sudden, I have excellent work colleagues and professional thought leader colleagues like Ginny that began to help me see some of the pieces of it that I needed to do, if that's indeed what I wanted to do. And I would never have gotten that help and that thought help from other people if I hadn't named it.
Yeah.
I think the second thing that we mentioned in the book, for Ginny, it was the woods, but it's finding a place that is the sacred place for you, that you can do some of this deep thinking. It may be a favorite chair in your den, or it may again be on the beach, but just having a place that you feel that you can hear. I think that's it. Get the distractions away, the daily distractions, and hear. We also mention spiritual practices in our book, or leadership practices, you can call them. But this is where I think you really have to choose what works for you. It may be journaling, it may be meditation, it may be going for walks. It may be reading. For Ginny and I, oh my gosh, we trade so many books back and forth. And then the learning partner idea, having a person to share this with all along the way. Some roads or journeys or years, and others are just a transition that you can get through in months. But regardless, what we found is the same steps work.
Do you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask? Anybody on the call? I don't want to be, I have a bunch, but I don't want to.
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to say this really resonates with me. I know in our organization, we're trying very hard to look at, Ginny, you talk about strengths. We are very keyed in on strengths. I'm an individualizer as my number one. But, we really are looking at, what do people bring to the table? How do we help them to be self-aware or use emotional intelligence to really hone in on some of that? And then how do we build that into the servant leadership model, starting with ourselves? how we take care of ourselves, how we reflect, and get rid of all of those noises that sometimes are around us. And I value this. I'm a Parker Palmer fan too. I just love his works. I love that he started with education, and I just
Right.
love him. Still follow him. And of course he's from Madison. So I just love him. So a lot of this just is like preach, I
Right.
love this. I just want to say, so thank you for this. And
Thank
I ordered
you.
the book. Haven't read the book, but plan to use the book.
That's wonderful. And I guess I had one burning question that I wanted to ask, and that is, would either of you do anything differently?
Then we have,
Yeah,
I
I think I know the answer, but I'm not gonna.
that,
Would you do anything different?
no, I'm about to turn 75 next March. So this is 25 years later from in the woods. And I can tell spiritually already there's an energy moving me, and there's a new beginning, and there's an ending. There are always these endings that lead to new beginnings. And so I sat down between last night and today in the midst of doing this inspection report and all that goes with buying a new home, right? New home, and read the healing journey. And I said to myself, I don't know how you were led to do what you did, but it's a great model and you need to do it again. You're being led all over again to start the season, the new season, to ritualize. Ritual is something that you hear a lot in the healing journey. As I release a lot of I won't have room to keep with me anymore, there's going to be many people on to honor what was and create new space for what will be. And I wanted to say that one of the things that I did originally that has connected so meaningfully with all the leadership experiences I've had, as well as becoming even more important as I grow into this next season of my life, is find the time to listen and start each day with listening to my own heart. And if I do that, then I'm more centered to be able to listen to those with whom I interact or those I lead, those who need to have a chance to express their opinion, as you said, about the workplace. And I think that what the woods taught me that I would never change is how to listen to the rhythm of life, frankly, how to listen to the rhythm of my own soul, how to listen to my heart. And in so doing, I want to become more and more of a presence of listening to those with whom I relate, to really hearing life itself. So no, I'm just going to continue to build on what happened and I wouldn't change it. That's my answer to that.
That's
Kim,
incredible.
for me, I didn't know if your question was, is there anything in your life you would change or writing the book, but these two things go hand in hand. I think the thing that I would change is the first 35 years of my working life. I loved what I did, and I was passionate about it, but I overworked. And I was on planes and I was flying, and there were vacations that didn't happen because we were working on books. And since I worked on Wisdom of the Woods, started 5 years ago, there was a new spaciousness that I wrote into my life, and I just wished that I had been able to do this the first part of my career. And part of it is just our role models and the generation I'm from. It is, the more you work, the better it is, and the more you're respected, the more you. And I think in leadership right now, I know friends of mine that lead companies, and everyone has heard this, but a different generation that we have now has different priorities.
Yeah.
And it's tough in organizations right now because we have these conflicting things. But I'll tell you, I believe they're the ones that are getting it right. And I wish that I had that sense of my own life. And again, there's lots of different ways you can do that and get that. But our book, Wisdom from the Woods, really is a commercial for taking this time, for yourself.
It's interesting because Duane, I've watched him over these years create this spaciousness and change the rhythm of life. And then busy up life, and I read what he writes, and he reminds me to go back and let go of all that and to
Right.
really support that spaciousness and that time to really slow it down so that the creativity that does come through me has much more of a possibility to form what my heart really needs. So that creative process is something, Duane, that I continue to learn from you. And as you write up to me about your experiences, and I know you've watched transformation in me, but I can't tell you all what a significant transformation and change I've seen in Duane's life. And we continue to support each other. Times I forget, and then he reminds me, and sometimes he forgets, and I might remind him. So those learning partners like we have in each other.
Well, we really try to keep these conversations close to an hour, but I could chat with you guys all day. I mean, you have inspired me so much. You've given me so much more to think about. My takeaway from today, Jen says, is the question of what lights me up. Yes. Yeah. And that is just brilliant. Anyone else? Would you like to shout out a takeaway or a question or anything like that before our time ends?
I'd like to thank Duane for explaining where his soulful spot is. I mean, I, like Ginny, go into the forest and listen. I grew up in northern Wisconsin. I currently live on 12 acres, and I go into the forest when I need to reconnect. And so thank you, Duane, for telling us where you find that in the middle of downtown Dallas. And I think that's important for everybody to have that place and to find that place where that is for you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that was great.
If you haven't bought the book, please get it.
Yes.
And I want to thank Ginny and Duane for the book, and for Ginny's personal note in my copy. And because Ginny has been an inspiration and a role model and a mentor for me and one of my learning partners. And I am where I am today because of Ginny. And I'm grateful.
Wow.
We touched.
Beautiful.
And I'm just so grateful for you all. If I could just share my screen really quickly again. I will send out information at the end. We do have 2 more webinars coming up later this month. I have a new book coming out next month. You can create positive change at work. And and then the next we will have Kim Cameron will be talking with us as well. So here's some additional resources that I'd like to encourage you to look at. ISODC has a really vibrant LinkedIn group. We also have a LinkedIn group, Culture, Change, and Leadership. Both of these are pretty active LinkedIn groups, and they can help you be your learning partners. But I think you need to have, a much closer learning partner as well, like you guys have. And I just want to thank you both so much. I will be sending out a replay of this conversation. So if you want to listen to it again, I think, I can't wait to listen to it again. I'll probably get more out of it the second time, right? Maria says, I think it's important to look at your life in totality, not reflecting on what we do differently. Everything we do is what we were meant to do at that time. No do-overs, so no regrets. Embrace that. And I did think you would say, oh, I wouldn't do anything over or do anything differently, but I wanted to hear you. I wanted to hear if you would say that. So no regrets, right? As the tattoo in We Are the Millers says, right? And someone else says, withdraw in order to build yourself. A very powerful statement. Yes. Thank you so much, both of you. And I look forward to hearing about your next steps. I think maybe you have a journal in you coming out, or Wisdom from the Woods Part 2, right? Something like that. So, these are never sales pitches, but I just want to encourage you to learn from this time together. But also, if you want to take that next step and get this book, it will change your life. So thank you so much, you guys.
It's a real honor to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And Ginny, I have my oldest lives in Chicago, and my grandbaby. So I'm really excited to hear that you are moving to Chicago, because I'm going to email you and try to show up on your doorstep one day. Oh,
I look forward to it. And
sounds great.
Spoke it
Thank
out
you
loud.
for having us.
Sounds great. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Wayne.